I think my son is a serial killer. Welcome back to Creepy Crochet and Creepy Pasta. Let's get into today's scary story. I tried my best. I really tried. I didn't want parenthood, but when it's given to you, hell, it's hard not to fall in love with it. It has its ups and downs, sure, but through it all, you learn to love your child. They're an extension of you, a part of you that you can try and mold into an even better version. Unfortunately, people aren't as clean-cut as that. You tell them to zig, and they zag. It's just how life is. Beyond the disagreements and head bumping, though, it's still possible to raise a kid. Bring them up right in the world. That's what I thought I was doing. My son was well-mannered, a gentleman, and God, did he have his way with the ladies. Once high school started, it seemed like every other week he was telling me all about his new love or how he was sure this was the one. He was only 15, but who was I to cast doubt on whatever love life he found for himself? Plus, it all stayed at school, having those cafeteria dates and what have you. However, by 17, he was actually bringing girls over to meet us, have dinner with his mom and I. Now, I'm not the best with names, but I do remember faces quite well. That's why when I started noticing the missing person flyers, I was quick to cock an eyebrow. But this is my son we're talking about, the boy who I'd raised since I was a child myself. I was 16 when he was born. I worked my ass off for him. We grew up together. I couldn't convince myself that everything was peachy forever, though. And by the time I saw Miranda's name on one of those flyers, the most recent girl he had brought home, I knew that I had to talk to him. I needed to set things straight, give some relief to my suspicion. I begged God, prayed like a madman that I was wrong. But the more I thought, the more I started connecting dots. I'd never had one of these girls visit more than once or twice. I'd already caught my son sneaking out at night on multiple occasions. He seemed to always have those hollow eyes whenever he interacted with any of them. When he talked about them, though, it was different. It was like he was truly excited, but not in that normal teenage boy kind of way. It was like when he talked to me about them, he was fantasizing, thinking about what he wanted to do to them. When I finally got home after a long day at the office, I practically sprinted up the stairs to my son's room to inquire. To my disappointment, the room was empty and my son was nowhere to be seen. What I did find, though, were missing persons flyers, folded neatly on his nightstand, each one depicting a different ex-girlfriend. Now, if it had been the flyers by themselves, I'd have been able to explain it away. Maybe he was helping to hang them up. Maybe he had just run out to finish and had forgotten to grab them. No. Life can never be that easy. What made me realize that I needed to do more than just talk to my son was what had been written on the flyers. Scrawled across each flyer in the handwriting that I helped my boy practice with were complaints. Too loud, too demanding, too arrogant, too annoying. I sifted through the papers, and by the end had read a total of 7 complaints. A tear fell down my face, streaming down the cheek, dipping into my newly discovered smile. I must have been in a trance because I didn't even hear the bedroom door open. All I remember is that faint, quiet, "Dad?" before I turned to greet my son. Emotion overwhelmed me, and all I could think to say as I outstretched my arms for a hug was, "That's my boy."
Welcome to the Midnight Sesh. We have inhaled some Cat 4. Now let's get into the story. So it was about 9:24 p.m. and it was very dark. I was watching television when I heard a loud thump from the passageway. Of course, I jumped. I didn't necessarily want to find out what it was. I'm very weird. I get thirsty after eating/drinking things that are not water. So after finishing my food and hearing that thump, I was very thirsty. I was shaking all over. I opened my bedroom door and the lights in my room suddenly dimmed. It was kind of quiet even though the TV was pretty loud and I was about 1 millimeter away from it. I walked out taking a look around. I was about 2 millimeters away from my bedroom door when suddenly it slammed shut. I was freaked out. One step further, I felt cold, like someone was watching me. I felt shivers running up my spine. I started running towards the kitchen door. I was about 4 millimeters away from the door when something jumped out in front of me. I was expecting to slam straight into it, but no, I went straight through it. I quickly turned around to see what it was. I saw a shadow figure with red eyes. They were big eyes and they kept expanding and then contracting. I felt its cold breath on my face. It was about 2 times taller than I was, and I'm quite tall. I quickly turned around to see where the doorknob was. I turned back while opening the door and it was gone. I've been feeling the same stuff every night, but I haven't seen whatever it was since that night. I never go through that passageway during the night anymore. Not without the passage light on, at least. Does anyone know what the hell this was? because I'm really scared about what happened. And right now, I'm hearing the thumping as I'm typing this out. I'm in my room and I'm home alone. Fuck, dude. Something's in your house, unfortunately. Get that bitch cleansed ASAP, please. Let me know your thoughts down below. Go ahead and like, follow, comment, and share. I love you as always. Bye.
After reading this scary story submission, I don't think that I am going to ever be brave enough to swim in a lake after dark ever again. This submission came in from an older gentleman named Gary, who rented a secluded cabin on a lake for an entire week for his family to get together and just enjoy each other. The first few days were absolutely perfect, but every single night, he said around 3 a.m, they would hear someone jumping off of the dock into the lake. So on that third night, he said it was a little bit different than it had been. He actually kept hearing splash into the lake over and over again until sunrise. He just naturally assumed that there were teenagers sneaking onto the property, but on that fourth night, he went out to investigate. So he grabbed his flashlight, went to the dock, and noticed that the lake was perfectly still. There was no other boat out there other than theirs, no ripples in the water, nothing. As he turned to head back, he noticed something strange at the end of the dock. It was soaking wet, as if somebody climbed up out of the lake and onto the dock. So he shined his flashlight down and noticed that there were footprints, not leading to the water, leading away from it. The footprints stopped at the cabin wall, and that's when he heard dripping. Not outside, but inside. So he ran back into the cabin. A trail of lake water stretched across the living room floor, up the stairs, and it had stopped right outside of his youngest daughter's bedroom. The room was empty, the window was still locked, and there was nowhere for anyone to actually hide, but it freaked the family out so much that they left before sunrise. They called the property owner, explained what happened and why they left early. The property owner actually admitted that anybody that had stayed longer than 3 nights at this cabin would hear someone diving off the dock. But no one was ever able to explain why the footprints came out of the water and never went back. I have many questions for this man. But my final thought is this: if you're staying at a lake cabin and in the middle of the night you hear someone jumping into the water, don't go looking, because whatever jumped into that water might already be walking toward you. And as always, we believe in Jesus around here, and we claim no negative energy from any of the spooky stories that I tell. Love you, bye.
You got your late night snack? This is Last Thread Before Bed, episode 30. This is a little series where I read scary stories from Reddit before I go to bed, and I try not to get nightmares. So boom, let's get into it. Tonight's story is on the subreddit Ghost Stories thread from user spiritual-fact3676. So it started in mid-2022. My best friend saw a really tall black figure. We shared an interest in ghosts, so we talked to this thing and named it the figure. Keep in mind, we've talked to other ghosts before, and they were all a part of his life. Apparently, according to the figure, him and his sibling Yershkaya, I definitely butchered that, had a crazy Russian stepdad who ripped his face off or did something like that. Same with Urshkaya and another ghost they're close with. Urshkaya is half biologically Russian and half Vietnamese. The figure is half Vietnamese and half South Korean. The figure tended to flash lights and communicate in Morse code, although we don't speak Morse code, me and my best friend. He flickers candles now, the mini electric ones. We saw a face, sort of like a sinister smile with sharp teeth, like a Cheshire cat. Oh fuck. It's the figure's face. It means protection when his dad's ghost is nearby. Forward to September. It was my best friend's birthday party. We were having fun and messing about, and we emptied a whole packet of stars. All of a sudden, me and her see the figure in a star shape with his perfectly circular head above it. Keep in mind, he was this freakishly tall black shadow, but more opaque. He can shapeshift. He became one of the stars. We decided to talk to him later that night with our other friend, and he didn't know us too well at the time. Fast forward to July 2023, my cousin knew the figure. The figure was getting quite comfortable around me at that point and was slowly getting comfortable around my cousin. We got a piece of toilet paper, one single piece, and asked him to move it. Keep in mind, my windows were completely shut, my door was shut, and my blinds were down. We stood a reasonable distance away and it moved straight away. We both saw it and looked at each other. We ran downstairs to tell people what we saw. Same thing happened at a different friend's house. We used tinfoil. We opened the door and the tinfoil moved. He showed me that the door doesn't create enough of a draft to make the tinfoil move no matter how hard you move it. Forward to this day, I feel his presence with me a lot, especially at sleepovers with friends. I think he feels safe with me, although I felt his presence wait away. But I can feel it stronger now. It's as if he's hugging me. Well, I think so. I usually feel his touch as he likes to feel my hair or give me a poke when he's done with some movement with things. Also, apparently, me and him and my cousin's friends and the figure's friends were all good friends and family in past lives. That was a tongue twister. It was extremely in the past. The area looked like the village of 7 deadly sins. Me and my cousin asked him to show us. We both saw the same thing, and everyone was there together. Anyone else seen or experienced something familiar? I don't fucking think so, man. Holy shit. Let me know your thoughts on this story. That was pretty crazy. Regardless of what that was, I don't think it was something good. Follow for more scary stories.
I was 18 years old when I had a run-in with Sasquatch in West Virginia in the Appalachian Mountains. Welcome back to Confessions with Jordan, where I take anonymous submitted confessions that are untold and unbelievable. The stories range from scary to traumatic to dark to embarrassing. If you have any you'd like to share, you can email me at confessionswithjordan@gmail.com. This one comes from Tyler. I saw this account and felt this was the perfect opportunity to share a story that I'm unable to talk about with anybody. The only person who saw it with me will not talk about it. He's a police officer now. This happened when we were 18. We used to drive old logging roads at night because there wasn't else much to do where we grew up. We would park, talk, maybe have a couple of beers that our older brother had bought for us, and head home. One night we ended up farther back than we had been before. There was an abandoned bridge that crossed a creek. It had been closed for years because the middle section had started to collapse, but you could still walk across part of it. We got out and were just standing there listening to the water walking back and forth on the little bridge when he nudged me and he said, "Who's that?" We looked to our left, and about 200 yards down the old road, there was someone walking towards us. At first, I figured another guy was out here, maybe hunting, something like that. But something was definitely weird, and it was 1 a.m. The stride was uneven, like the person was taking way longer steps forward than was appropriate for their height, causing their head to bob around a little erratically. It was covering way too much ground with each step. I have seen similar walks on recent AI videos. Of course, AI didn't exist back then, but it was very similar to that. Its knees barely bent, from what I could see. I remember saying, "What the hell is wrong with that guy?" We started walking back towards the truck, not because we were scared necessarily, but because we didn't really want to meet some random person in the middle of nowhere at 1 a.m. that was acting like they were drunk or something. I looked back, and it had closed half the distance of the 200 yards, way faster than it should have, and I had heard no running, no heavy footsteps, nothing to indicate that the thing had gained speed to close that distance so quickly. I turn back towards the truck and start reaching for the handle when my friend just stops, and he goes, "Dude." I looked up, and it wasn't on the road anymore. It was standing in the trees beside the road. It must have crossed 20-something feet sideways without either of us seeing it move within the second or two that it took me to turn around to my truck and then glance back at the street. That's when I realized how freakishly tall it was. Now that it was closer, it was at least 8 feet or more. Its shoulders looked almost as wide as the hood of my truck. The thing itself was very dark. I believe it was covered in hair because its face was more visible than the rest of its body, apart from the center of its chest. But it wasn't really close enough to attain facial features yet. Its mouth hung open, I could tell that much, as it stood next to the tree. It certainly didn't look like a bear on its hind legs or a gorilla at this point. I remember thinking that it looked sick, like the way it was hanging and the way that it was standing made me think that it was ill. We got into the truck, locked the doors. My friend laughed, and he says, "Okay, so that guy can stay out there." I started the engine. Nothing. The truck wouldn't start. First try, second try, third try, it turned over. This was common, my truck was old. The second it started, something hit the underside of my truck, causing the suspension to move us up and down very aggressively for a moment. Both of us screamed. I couldn't see anything out my windows. My friend started yelling, "Go, go, go!" And I slammed on the gas, put it in reverse, slammed on the gas. The tires spun but didn't move at first. And then the truck just lurched backwards. I felt a bump as if I had run something over. I didn't really care. As I backed up for the road, I could see that I had just backed over the guy, or whatever it was. It was laying on the ground with its hands behind its head, laying flat on its back, looking towards the truck to its side at us. It looked kind of like it was smiling, not with teeth, but just the lips. And my lights were shining directly on its face, and it most certainly looked like a weird mix of human and animal. I don't know how to describe it. It had human eyes and a human mouth, but it had flat nose and hair and kind of pointy, higher set ears. We shot down the road. I looked in the mirror expecting it to be chasing us. It wasn't. Though I was paranoid in the dark on the way back to town, and I felt like every time I looked out the window, I would see it running alongside us in the foliage, but I think that was my imagination. When we finally got somewhere with lights, we got out of the truck and was looking around for damage because of the big bump that we had experienced first, and then when we backed the thing over the second time. There were dents, 5 of them, in a line on the front, under the front bumper. Each one the size of the bottom of a soda can, like someone had pressed their fingertips into the metal and the truck had bent underneath of it, as well as some piping and parts of my truck underneath being bent backwards. The next morning, my dad asked what happened to the truck because he could see the bottom of the front bumper was damaged. I lied and told him that I hit a deer. A year later, I sold the truck. I think about it to this day, and I don't think that the thing was trying to hurt us. It was like observing us, almost playing with us. That, or it was deciding whether or not we were worth killing. Thank you all for listening. I will see you next week for another confession.
This photo was taken a couple of years ago during Halloween. It was around 1:30 in the afternoon, and we were riding on a bus taking pictures when we suddenly noticed something strange in one of them. Whatever we captured appears to be looking through the opening in the back of the seat. The seat behind us was empty. I have a photo that, if I'm being honest, gave me a huge scare the first time I saw it. A friend of mine took this picture while he was working late at night, specifically around midnight. According to him, he was alone when he started feeling extremely uncomfortable, like someone was watching him. He described the feeling as if there was somebody nearby following him or even wanting to hurt him. When he looked around, he noticed what appeared to be a little girl standing in the distance, watching him. And that's when he decided to take a picture. I was at home watching TikTok when suddenly I started hearing some strange noises. It seemed weird because my family wasn't home at the time, but I didn't think much of it. Later on, I heard more noises again, so I turned around to see what it was. I immediately started recording, and this is what I captured.
So I think my house is haunted. I'm gonna bring you back to like about 3 years ago. We have a room that's downstairs, and I used to be in that room. I remember one day, I had my phone, I was watching YouTube, and I walked into that room, and like without looking, I turned on the light, and then I heard a doll's voice calling my sister's name. Mind you, my sister was not home. And I paused my YouTube, and I was like, did I hear that right? Did I hear that right? It said it again. I ran out the room and never went in there again. And I'm up here. And then like last week, I was sitting here, and my mom was like, she told me that she was going to go downstairs to let the dogs out. And I heard a little knock on my door. I promise you I'm not joking. So I was like, come in. No one there. Went and opened the door. No one there. Absolutely no one. There was no one there. And then a few days later, I was in my bed, and I was like, it was like 10 o'clock at night, and all my lights were off. I heard the knock again. It was like a faint knock. I didn't answer. There was no one there. I'm just waiting for other stuff to happen, because I know my house is haunted. I think I kind of foreshadowed with my pin video. I can't do this.
This is absolutely crazy. So, yesterday I was going about my day like normal. I had grabbed my clothes from the laundry room and was taking them back upstairs to our apartment. And I remember having my phone with me. I dropped it on the floor right by our couch. And I was gonna change into my work clothes. So, before that, I sat down at the computer desk to play some video games, And I remember checking my phone, picking it up and seeing a message from one of my coworkers, and she said that someone else was covering her shift. Okay, and then I didn't actually take my phone into my room with me, but I took my work clothes and I changed. And then when I was getting ready to leave, I couldn't find my phone. So I spent a couple minutes looking for it, and I was like, it's okay, I'm just gonna leave without it. So I left without my phone, and I called Gabe through the work phone we have at Sonic. And I told him, can you check the places I last was? Like, I was in the living room, I was by your computer, and he couldn't find it. So I was just like, check the whole house, right? So he checked his room, my room, like everywhere. He even checked like the laundry room to see if I had left my phone in the dryers, which I didn't. That would be stupid of me, but so I get home from work, and now I'm going to try to look for it. I actually checked my car twice, once before work and once like during work when we were slow. So it wasn't in my car, and I don't usually have my ringer on, but you can hear my phone vibrating. Like, no. And I was listening for that the entire time, but I could not find it. So I got home. I checked all the way around the living room. I checked under the couch, in the couch, everywhere that I had been. And so me and Gabe go into my room to check my room, even though I haven't been in there. We checked his room because it's not very messy. Mine was pretty messy, but I get the bright idea to say, hey Siri, right? Because Siri's gonna say, and I could have her call someone, or she would be like, yes, I'm gonna call, right? Siri replies to you. So we're listening around for my phone, and it actually is in my room. So Gabe said he shook out all the blankets and sheets and stuff when he had checked my room. And so we were doing that. It sounded like it was on my bed. And I have this hole in my pillow, and we were trying to check that to see if it was in my pillow, which it sounded like it was coming from, but it wasn't. Now, here's the crazy part. I thought it maybe could have been under my mattress. My mattress is just on the floor. And so I flip it up to look under it, and I put it back down, and my phone is right there on top of the mattress. It just kind of appeared in front of both of us. We were standing face to face. Gabe was on top of my bed checking like sheets and stuff, and he looked up at me and went as I flipped up the mattress and put it back down, and it just appeared in front of us. Gabe has had experiences like this before living with his mom. Like, it would happen with like his wallet or his keys or even like his phone, and I guess some ghost or something has followed us here and is messing with us now, which I really don't appreciate. Gabe was a little bit spooked, but I was just really mad. Like, would you want some ghost following you around and taking your stuff and hiding it from you? I know I don't really like that, but the whole experience was just insane.
This is my second ghost story. It happened almost a year to the day after the first one. I was in my second year of film school. It was March of 1983. I was 22 years old, and I was struggling in school, which was really unusual for me. Ever since the ghost experience, I had been battling depression, which was new for me. It was something I'd never had before. And I was dealing with anger issues and frustration issues, angry outbursts. I wasn't looking after myself. I wasn't eating well. I was disinterested in my studies. The assignments bored me and I couldn't complete them. Like, I was really struggling, and this was really unusual for me. I was an honors student. I had entrance scholarship offers to 3 top universities upon graduation from high school. This was so unlike me, but that's where I was at by March of 1983. And I should tell you, what I didn't know at the time was this change in my behavior and my feelings and my thoughts was due to spirit attachment. I had no idea. I thought when that first ghost experience had ended and that smell had manifested in my parents' sitting room, that was the ghost that I had invited into my body. That was evidence of it leaving me. That's what I thought. But years later, there was a lot of evidence that I was able to produce in my journals that showed that no, that's not what happened. 2 ghosts had entered me that day. This is what I discovered years later. A man and a woman who, they may have been married in real life. They had a relationship in real life before they died. They had entered me when I had asked for a good ghost to write me a message. And whatever had vacated me that day, I don't know 100% for sure what it was, but I suspect strongly that it was another attachment, one that I had had since childhood, since I was 6 years old, when I suffered a traumatic experience. And I think it was then that I allowed a ghost to enter me. And that was the first case of attachment, and it had stayed with me all that time from the age of 6 to 22. And I think when these 2 other entities entered my body, that 3 was a crowd, and either this first ghost just left or they pushed him out. Either way, I didn't know it, but I had 2 attachments, and that's the important thing to know here. And that's why I was struggling, and that's why I had all these strange feelings and anger outbursts. I was feeling feelings that these attachments were responsible for, not me, but I didn't know that. By March, I was in pretty rough shape. I was miserable the whole school year, and my family had a dinner planned. My mom was a great cook, and I hadn't eaten a good meal in I don't know how long, and so I was excited to go to my parents' place for dinner. And unlike a year earlier when I had a car, that was my father's car, and he was often away on business for extended periods of time, and he would allow me to use his car when he was gone. But at this time now, he was back in town, and so I had to use the public transportation, and there was a bus that I had to take to get from my apartment to my parents' place. And on this particular day, I was waiting for the bus at a bus station, and then all of a sudden a thought entered my mind. School is killing me. I have to drop out. And this thought was so prevalent that I began to chant it. I don't recall many people being around, so I don't know if I looked like a lunatic on the bus platform talking to myself, but I was saying it out loud as I'm pacing and waiting for the bus to show up. And the more I chanted it, the more I thought, why not? Like, the thought of dropping out had never crossed my mind. It was not something I would ever do. I wasn't a quitter, and it just wasn't something that would occur to me. And in that moment it did. And I thought, yeah, end your misery. Get out of school. And the bus came. As I rode 10 minutes to my parents' place and thought about leaving, I convinced myself that's what I had to do. And I felt relieved. For the first time in a year, I felt an end to that misery that was possible. I got to my parents' place, and I was standing at the front door. I rang the bell, and my sister Beth, she opened the door, and we hadn't seen each other in months. Beth was married, and I didn't see her as often. And plus, I hadn't seen anybody that year anyway with my misery. So she saw me, and she was happy to see me, and she said, "How are you?" And I said, "I'm great." And I meant it. Like, I really meant it. I had just decided to drop out of school, and I felt great. And the moment I said that, I felt this instant well of tears suddenly rise up within me, like crazy rush of tears. I wasn't a person prone to cry. I had bottled up my feelings since I was 6 years old. So it was really unusual, and I said, "I'm great. I think I'm gonna cry." And all of a sudden it just came, like sobbing in the front hall in front of my sister, and I felt embarrassed, and I stifled it immediately. And she was like, what's the matter? Are you okay? And I was like, I don't know what's going on. I think I just need to be alone. And I said, I'm gonna go to my room. And she's like, okay. And so I ran up the stairs, and my bedroom was just down the hall from my parents' bedroom on the second floor, and hadn't been changed in the 2 years since I moved out. My parents' place was quite large, and they had no reason to redecorate it, so it was just as I had left it. And I entered the room and shut the door and went over to a window seat with a cushion on it. And the moment I sat down, all of a sudden those tears just came like a floodgate opened. And this time I didn't stifle them. I didn't know why I was crying, but I sobbed. And suddenly, while I'm sobbing, like probably within a matter of seconds, a loud buzzing sound I could hear in my ear. And my fingers on both hands and my arms started tingling, kind of like a feeling like when your limbs fall asleep. But it happened really fast. Like, I had just sat down, I just started crying, and then all this happened right away. And I stopped crying, and my hands started to move, like raise up off the seat beside me, both of them at the same time, without my conscious intention to move my hands. So I was like watching them, like I'm watching somebody else's limbs move, and they're rising in front of me, and they came together, palm to palm, fingertip to fingertip, in a prayer position in front of my chest, you know, like right here. And I was like baffled, stunned, amazed, surprised. I didn't know what was going on, but I just tried to pull my hands apart and I couldn't. They were literally like glued together, like they were super glued together. The force that was compelling them to move pinned them together. It was weird. And I stood up and got to the center of my room, tried to pull them again, and I couldn't move them. And I was like on the verge of panic. The force that was compelling them to move pinned them together. And I was like on the verge of panic, and I felt like a command, urge. It wasn't a voice, but it was very clear instruction to get down on my knees and pray. And I was like, no, I wasn't going to get on my knees and pray. I didn't believe in God, so I refused. I was like, no. And then I had a very clear thought that said, I'm dying. And just like that, when those words entered my mind, the buzzing in my ears stopped, the vibration in my hands and arms stopped, and they dropped like stones to my side, like whatever had been holding them up and glued together, let go. All in that instant. I'm dying, and bam, everything stopped. And that was a very weird situation on top of, all the weirdness that was going on. But I believed it. The correlation was just too instantaneous. It was like that was the answer. That's what was happening. And I believed it, and I thought, wow, better tell somebody. So I went downstairs to the kitchen and went to my mom and I said, I need to talk to you. And she said, can it wait? I'm making dinner. And I was like, no, I need to talk to you right now. It's urgent. And she's like, okay. I said, come to the living room. So we went into the living room. We sat down on a couch beside each other. And she goes, what is it? What's the matter? And I said, I don't know how to tell you this. Well, I'm just going to blurt it out. I'm dying. I was, 22. Other than not looking after myself that year, I was a healthy human specimen. I was athletic. I was not a sickly person. And my mom was sort of flabbergasted, and she goes, what gave you that idea? And I just said, I had an experience upstairs just now, and I know it. I'm dying. And she said, honey, you're not dying. And my mom was spiritual. I talked about her in my first ghost story. So, she belonged to a spiritual group. She had this meditation practice known as Latihan that she did twice a week. And I didn't understand any of it. But at this point is that she was spiritual. And she said, honey, you're not dying. If possibly some part of you is dying, to make room for something that needs to be reborn. But you yourself are not dying. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I am dying. And she goes, well, what happened? What was it that makes you believe that? And I said, it's because I was told to get on my knees and pray, and I refused, and now I'm dying. And she goes, well, that's ridiculous. Then just get on your knees and pray. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not. And I don't know what it was about the way I was speaking, but my mom suddenly reached out and put her hand on my forehead, checked my temperature, and she went, oh my God, you're burning up. And I went, see, I told you I was dying. And she goes, you're not dying. Just stay here. I'll be right back. I'm going to get a thermometer. She left the room and came back. She took my temperature, and it was 105 degrees. And I wasn't feeling sick. I had the symptoms that I've just described to you, which are strange, but not indicative of being ill, like physically ill with an illness. My mom was like, okay, I got to get you some Tylenol or something to reduce your fever. I'll be right back. Lie down on the couch. So she left. And from this point on, my memory of the order of events is a little jumbled. I had 105 degree temperature, so it's understandable that it got a little mixed up about the way things unfolded. Time sort of compressed on itself, but I never lost consciousness. I was fully aware of everything going on in the room around me, but some things were a little mixed up. Anyway, the next thing I remember is I'm lying there waiting for my mom to come back with aspirin, and I became aware of voices that I was hearing. A man's voice specifically. He was the loudest. And then there were two other voices that he was talking to. One for sure, but I kind of think there was two others, because looking back on it, that's kind of how it felt like. It was a conversation between three people, and I'm listening to it, and I know there's no one in the room, and it wasn't voices of my family in another room. It was definitely, I could tell that I was hearing something on the other side. I don't know how, but I could tell. And it was like they were in a waiting room, waiting for me. And suddenly I became so aware of them that I had to speak up. And I don't remember exactly what I initially said, but I remember my first question was, are you God? Are you God? And the man, who I couldn't see, chuckled, not in a mean way, but just in a lighthearted way, and went, no, we're not God. And I don't remember what he said beyond that in that first conversation, but I do remember feeling it was weird the way he kept saying we. And now, many years after the fact, I realized he was speaking on behalf of himself and those two other people who were there. And those were my two attachments. And that's why he kept saying we. But at the time, I just thought it's like a royal thing. We this, we that. Okay, I just accepted it. And that was it. So anyway, we had this kind of light get to know you chit chat, of which, like I said, I don't remember. Now, I just only remember that suddenly he said, okay, that's enough. Let's go. And he reached in, like with his spirit hand, it felt like, into my chest and pulled. And I could feel a sensation of what I can only describe as my soul being ripped out of my body. I mean, I know that sounds strange. That's exactly what it felt like. It was an awful feeling. And the moment I felt that pull, my instinctive reaction was to start kicking and flailing. So I was lying on the couch at this point. I must have looked like a crazy person, suddenly kicking and flailing. And all I know is that when I did that, the pulling sensation stopped. And when I stopped again, more conversations took place with this invisible man who I came to think of after the fact as the Reaper. Although years later now, I know that that being was a demon. But at the time, I just thought it was just a guy come to take me to the other side. And he didn't appear through his voice and his demeanor to be evil. I wasn't scared of him. I just didn't want to go with him. And I instinctively knew to fight that sensation when he tried to pull me against my will. So he continued to fight with me and say, you need to come with me. And I don't exactly remember when this happened, but I remember feeling at some point like maybe he was winning the fight. And all of a sudden, a voice within me that was definitely some part of me, but it wasn't my conscious self. I guess it was my higher self, suddenly started to plead and say, I can't go with you. I have to, like, my career ended up in the film business. I didn't know that at the time. I had no idea what I was doing. But at that moment, I said, I have to make movies. I have to give myself to people. I have to learn to be strong. You don't understand. I can't go. I have to stay. I tricked God, I said. I acted cocky all the time. I acted cool. I didn't believe in God, and God thought it was my time to die, but it's not. It was all a lie. I was wrong, and I need to stay. I should also say that my conversations with this man were completely telepathic. Like, I would have a thought, and he would answer the thought. Although I could hear his voice, like, not like a thought. It was like I was having a conversation. I could hear my thoughts, and I could hear his answers as clear as day, like he's standing in the room with me. I mean, this happened only one other time in my life, and I learned to channel years later, and channeling is just a completely different process, and it's very gentle, and it's like thoughts flowing through my mind that I write down. It's not hearing a voice. This was hearing a voice in my head, and it was telepathic, and it was like I'd been doing it my whole life. There was no struggling with it. There was no learning curve. It was just instant recognition that, oh yeah, that's how you talk to these beings. Anyway, hearing my higher self plead for my life was a really unusual occurrence. But I didn't have time to marvel at it at that moment. I was literally fearing for my life. And I said, I can't go, I need to stay. And he kept pulling and I kept kicking. And finally, I just realized that I had one foot on the other side and one foot still in this world. And I thought maybe I could ask questions and get answers that would help my family. And the Reaper agreed, although he said, it doesn't matter what we tell you, because after you leave, your family will forget it all anyway. He said, it doesn't matter what we tell you. After you leave, your family will forget it all anyway. And I was like, what? What do you mean? Like, wipe their minds? And I don't remember him answering me, but I was like, you guys are really tricky up there, aren't you? And he chuckled. But I said, I don't care. I still want to have you answer these questions. And so he agreed. And of all the questions I could have asked, it's strange that my mother's spirituality was the thing that confused me, and I wanted to answer on her behalf. And she and my sister Anne were in the room at this time. I think they were the only ones there. And I said to him, what's the laddie hand for? That was my mother's meditation practice. And he said, the laddie hand trains you to quiet your mind, and it prepares you for that moment of death. And I was like, oh. And by the way, I'm sure anything this guy said to me was a lie, because I know now, years later, that these beings, that's all they do is lie. They make up shit, whatever they got to say to do whatever they're trying to do. So none of it was true, I'm sure. But anyway, I didn't know that at the time. And I said to my mom, hey, you know what the laddie hand is for? It's to quiet your mind so that, prepare you for death. And my mother, I don't know what she said, but she and my sister didn't believe anything I was saying anyway. They were just concerned that I was having an episode of some sort. And so I asked another question. I said, well, why do they only do it for 30 minutes? Because that was the practice. You do it for 30 minutes and then you stop. And he said, because any longer than that and you would actually die. Your mind would become so quiet, you would die, which is ridiculous. But anyway, I said that to my mom and my sister. And again, I don't remember what they said, but they humored me. And I got to the end of the question period, and the Reaper said, okay, I've answered your questions, let's go. And pulled again, and I kicked again right away. And I said, I don't care. I know I must have bargained with him. I must have said, oh, I'll answer some questions and then I'll go. But I had no intention of going with him ever. So I said, I lied, I'm not going with you. And he said, if you don't go, you're gonna be crazy. And I'm like, I don't care, crazy, whatever, I don't care. And he says, no, you don't understand. No one will ever understand you. You will be miserable your entire life. And I was like, I don't care. I'm not going with you. I don't care what you say. And I don't know if it was right then at that moment or if there was a few more pulls and kicks before this, but the next thing I do recall is that he said, fine, stay. And the moment he said that, I remember I felt the most incredible relief. Like I'd never felt that kind of relief in my entire life. I had just won and I was gonna live. And I thought, all this time I'm fighting for my life. And it went on for a while. It was probably at least a half hour, if not more. And suddenly he said, stay. And I'm like, oh, I've won. I'm gonna live. But a moment later he said, stay and we'll take your father instead. We've come for someone, and if it's not you, it's gonna be your father. We've come for someone, and if it's not you, it's gonna be your father. And the way he said it, it chilled me to the bone. And I was like, what? No, you can't do that. And he said, oh, yes, we can. And I had never had a good relationship with my father. He was the disciplinarian in my house, and any of the physical abuse I had suffered as a child was always at his hand. And plus, we just never had a good relationship, even as a teenager or a young adult. But I didn't hesitate for 1 second. I didn't have to think about it. The moment this demon said to me, we're gonna take your father, my father was seated in a chair beside me at this point in the living room, and I could see him having no idea of the position I've just been placed in. And I said, fine, I'll go with you. And this time I meant it. But I said, will I ever see my family again? And he said, no, we don't think so. I'm like, what? Nobody? And he said, your brother-in-law, Brent, you two will see each other one day and have a good laugh together. And I was like, oh, thank God, Brent, one day you and I are going to have a laugh together in heaven. And at this point, Brent was in the room, and I remember him chuckling, but also feeling like everybody else, like anything I was saying was crazy. And I said to the Reaper, is that it? Just Brent? And he goes, well, your grandfather is waiting for you, so you'll see him. And I knew he was talking about my father's father, who I had adored, but who had died when I was like 5 or 6 years old. So I felt a sense of relief, a little sense that at least someone I knew would be waiting for me. And I was like, oh, good, that's good. And I said, well, can I just please say goodbye to my family, since this is the last time I'm ever going to see them again? And he was like, yes, sure, say goodbye. And so I asked my mom to get everybody in the room, and one by one, I was still on the couch, but they came over and hugged me, and I said, I love you, and I said goodbye, and I felt the deepest, awful sadness at the prospect of leaving. But I said goodbye, and I then believe that one of my mom's friends from her spiritual group had been called. He was one of the guys who had showed up a year earlier during that first ghost encounter, the men who had come over to do the meditation in my parents' bedroom sitting room area. He came over. And also before this moment, a doctor had come and gone. I don't remember exactly when, but I do remember him being there, and I remember him telling my parents that he had seen this kind of behavior in cases of acute schizophrenia, and he prescribed some kind of a drug. I believe it might have been lithium, but it never got filled. I was never going to take it, and I knew I wasn't having an episode of schizophrenia. And I also remember being kind of rude to him and saying, you have no business being here. This isn't a medical situation. This is a spiritual situation. Whatever I said, I wasn't very kind to him. But anyway, he went on his way. And then now I'm at the point where I've agreed to go. And my family all left the room, and they left my mom's friend from her spiritual group in the room with me. And I remember I'm lying on his lap, and I said to him, you believe me, don't you, about the laddie hand, what it's for, and why you should only do it for 30 minutes? And he said, yeah, I believe you. I believe you. And he's stroking my head. He's being very kind to me. And I realized well after the fact that he was just being kind to me, because he wasn't even there at my parents' house at that point when I was asking those questions. So he had no idea what I was talking about. But anyway, he was a very nice man. And I'm lying there, and I'm closing my eyes and waiting to see a tunnel or a white light or something, anything. I don't know where those ideas had come from, but I was looking for them and nothing was happening. And I suddenly realized I can't die like this lying on your lap. I need to curl up, and I got off, I pulled my head off his lap, and I curled up in a fetal position, and I thought, this is the way I need to die. And I curled up in a fetal position, and I thought, this is the way I need to die. and I close my eyes again, and I'm waiting, and nothing's happening. And suddenly the Reaper was gone, by the way, like he seemed to have left after I agreed to go and meant it. I'm lying there, and I suddenly kind of, not the same way I heard the Reaper, but it was very clear I felt the word sorry. And it was just like a very deep tone of finality. It was just sorry. And I knew right away it meant you're not going. And I'm like, but no, I need to go. I don't want to be crazy. I don't want to be miserable the rest of my life. Poppy, where are you? Poppy, I'm ready to see you. And nothing. And I might have even felt like a falling sensation, although it might have just been my temperature coming down, although I have no recollection of the moment at which I ever took the aspirin, but clearly I did. But anyway, I'm lying there. I feel like a sort of a mild sensation of falling. And I suddenly realized that for the first time in a year, I felt actually really good. Like, I felt relief that I had felt earlier when I thought I had won. And I guess I suddenly wasn't concerned any longer about the threats of being crazy or anything. I just felt good. And I opened up my eyes, and my mom's friend was no longer in the room. I was alone in the living room on the couch, and I wondered where everybody went. And I kind of pulled myself together and got up and walked to the dining room, which was about 40 feet away, through another set of doors. And everybody was seated around the dining table eating dinner. And I walked in, and they were like, oh, hi, like nothing had happened. Like nobody said anything other than, come, have dinner, sit down, we're eating. And they didn't mention a thing about what I had just been through. They didn't mention it then, and they didn't mention it ever again, which was weird. And I wondered in that moment when I entered the room whether they had their minds wiped. But I was too exhausted from the whole experience to even bring it up, so I just sat down and ate a delicious meal. And then I think like maybe a few months later, I don't know how long it was, maybe it was a few weeks, I don't know, but at some point later, I was at home visiting my mom, and I kind of got concerned, like maybe they did have their minds wiped. And I said to my mom, you remember that night when I fought for my life on the couch and, you know, all that crazy stuff went on? And she went, yes, of course I remember. And I went, oh, okay, good. I guess she didn't have her mind wiped after all. So anyway, that ended that ghost encounter. And again, I thought that was the end of it, but it wasn't. A year later, again, almost to the day, another March and another ghost encounter happened. This time, a completely different being showed up. And I'll tell you about that story next.
Before I go to sleep, let me tell y'all what the heck happened when I came back from camp. I went camping from like the 11th to I want to say like the 16th. On the 14th, I had came back from camp to go pick up something from my house real quick. I think it was some packages or something like that. So I didn't go in the house. I sat in the car, but my mom and my sister went in the house. When they go in the house, for some reason, they heard water running. Mind you, we know for a fact we had all the lights off and we didn't have no water running. That's just stupid. My mom goes in the bathroom and the water is running, but it's not running to where the bathtub is full. It's literally just like somebody just put it on right before we came in the house. She was like, that's weird, but she just shut the water off. She asked my sister if she put the water on. My sister was like, no, I didn't even go in the bathroom. Boom, right? They put the packages that I got from TikTok into my room, onto my bed. Nothing looked out of the ordinary in this house. Not in my room, not the bathroom after that. Like, nothing else in the bathroom. Not my sister's room. Nothing else in the house was out of its form or whatever. So my mom goes in the car and she tells me that the water was on, but it wasn't full, like if it just turned on, which was weird. So we're like, okay, that's weird. Now 2 days go by, and I think that's when we came back home from camp. The first stop I go in is my room, obviously. I get my bags from the back. I go and get my bags from the back of the car, and then I go in my room. And my packages were like, okay, this is how my bed is. My packages was all along that wall, like if somebody picked up my bed and threw them on that side. The craziest part about it is, you know how like there's a bed frame, right? And all four sides of the bed frame is down. My first corner of my bed, which is down by my feet, was literally lifted up. and it looked like somebody was trying to lift up my mattress to see if I had anything under my bed. Like, God forbid, let's say they were trying to steal from me or something. But no, nothing was missing from my room. And I had some, stuff in my room that I'm pretty sure somebody would have wanted to take. But nothing in my room was missing, let alone I had all my packages. So why is my bed lifted up like that? I asked my mom and my sister, like, do you guys remember the bed being like this when you dropped off my stuff? And they were like, no, the bed was not like that. Nothing was wrong with your room. So we were just like, that's really weird, really creepy, because we were gone for so many days, and why is weird stuff like this happening? I don't know. It could possibly be, which I really hope it's not, an intruder in the house, but I don't know. What's your thoughts on it?
I had an interaction with what I believe was an interdimensional being once in my life, and this is a hard story to tell, and I've never told it before. And there's some messy details I'm going to have to leave out because I don't want this information on the internet for the whole world to see, but I'll get into it. I was in my very early 20s. I was living by myself. I was in a very, very bad, dark place in my life. I was mixed up in some stuff. I'm good now, taken care of, clean, whatever. But I was in this apartment, and it was just a dark, bad place. And one night I am asleep, and I hear a door open. I wake up, and the door to my room is open. In the doorway, I see a silhouette of a black figure. I can't really make out good details. And then this all took place in about 3 seconds. I looked at it, and it moved very rapidly into the room and was looming over me. And I screamed. And I know this wasn't sleep paralysis because I was moving and I was able to move. And there is a light switch above me. My bed was right under a light switch. And I started slapping around. I scream and I slap around. I find a light switch, I flip it on, and it's gone. And that's really it. But the thing is that I remember most is the feeling of the presence. It was the most horrible, frightening, evil feeling I've ever felt. I myself was terrified, but this thing, it just had this just aura of the only way I can describe it is evil. Pure evil. Never felt it before in my life. I haven't felt it since. I've only encountered that thing this one time. I think about it a lot. I'm afraid of it. I sure hope it doesn't come back. I've done some research since, and I've found out I'm not the only person who's had an experience like this. So if you have had one, please comment. I don't know. I just kind of just want to get this out there. And sorry, I know this isn't the best video probably. It's surprisingly hard to talk about. It was a bad experience. And one that I'll never forget. Thanks.
On the morning of November 4th, 2018, 40-year-old Tamla Horsford was found deceased in the backyard of a friend's home in Cumming, Georgia. She had been attending an adult sleepover party, which was meant to be a celebration for the mom who was hosting with other football moms from their son's youth football league. I looked up how to pronounce this county. I think I'm saying it right, but correct me in the comments if I'm not. The Forsyth County Sheriff's Office very, very quickly ruled her death an accident, stating that she had fallen off a second-story balcony. But Tamla's family was not convinced, and neither were the hundreds of thousands of people across the country who would come to learn her story. What followed was a controversial investigation marked by conflicting witness statements, a lack of photographs, compromised evidence, and questions about whether or not the color of her skin played a role in how authorities handled the case. And today we're going to break down the case. I do have an entire podcast episode on this case, so if you think you've heard this story from me before, you have, but I've gotten so many DMs the last week from you guys asking me to cover it on TikTok, so that's what I'm doing. And for the sake of TikTok, I'm not going to go into as much detail as I did in the podcast episode because we simply do not have time, but that episode does exist if you want to go listen to that. 40-year-old Tamla Horsford was a devoted wife and mother of 5 sons. She lived with her husband, Leander Horsford, in Forsyth County, Georgia. Leander, her husband, who goes by Lee, had a daughter from a previous relationship, so she joined their family, and from day one, Tamla treated her as if she was her own. So like I said, the family lived in Forsyth County, and context to that is important to mention. In Tamla's case, the relationship between her skin color and her death has been a subject of significant controversy and debate. A lot of people, if not most, who have followed this case since day one believe strongly that that did play a massive role in this case. And though there is no direct evidence that the color of her skin did play a role in what happened to her, I do think it's very important to mention that Forsyth County, Georgia, has a deep, troubling racial history. For decades, it was known as one of the most segregated counties in America. In 1912, the entire Black population was violently expelled from the county, and for more than 75 years afterwards, really no people of color lived there. The population there went from 1,098 Black residents to less than 5. And while the county has become more diverse in recent decades, the legacy of that history remains, and that unfortunately does play a big part in Tamla's case. By all accounts, Tamla was a very caring social person who was deeply involved in her children's lives. It sounded like she had sort of the life of the party personality. She was always in a good mood, she always had a big smile on her face, and she was always up for anything. She attended every single activity for every single one of her children. If you could count on her for one thing, it would be that no matter what, she always showed up for her family. She had the privilege to be able to stay at home with her children while Lee was the provider of the family, and that was something that she never once took for granted. So the kids were involved in a lot of sports. One of those was football, and through their son's youth ball football league, there were football moms, obviously including Tamla, who had bonded over supporting their kids on the field. Tamla had gone to know most of them, and she was familiar with them. She knew their kids, which is why in November of 2018, when she received an invitation for a friend adult sleepover at one of the mom's house, she was really considering going. And she ultimately decided to do so because why not? She knew most of the women who were going, and it sounded like it did have the potential to be a very fun night. She told her husband Lee that she wasn't incredibly eager to go, but it was more of a why not. So on the night of November 3rd, 2018, Tamla had dinner with her kids and her husband Lee at home before heading out to go to her friend's house to celebrate. She drove herself to the party and Lee stayed home with the kids. And the whole reason why there was a party slash sleepover to begin with was because of John Myers. She was hosting it at her house, and she was very, very much so into football. LSU was playing Alabama, and she saw it as an opportunity to throw a little party, cheer on LSU. And she was the one who extended the invite to Tamla. And I say friends very, very lightly because it's not like they did everything together. They didn't hang out outside of seeing each other at their kids' sporting events. But anyway, Tamla Horsford arrived at the party around 8:30 p.m. And John had invited a group of moms, most of whom they'd also met through the local youth football league. And they knew that they were likely going to be up late, be up partying, which is why a lot of them had decided to spend the night. Tamla got there, and shortly after she arrived, she changed into pajamas. It was a white onesie covered in paw prints. And their little party was originally supposed to be all women, only for the moms. But Jean's boyfriend, Jose Barrera, and another husband of another mom called Stacy ended up sticking around. So at the party, there were 10 women, including Tamla, all of whom were white women, except for Tamla, by the way, and then the 2 men. The party got started, everyone's talking, relaxing, mingling, whatever. There were a few of the women who had only met once or not at all, so people were introducing themselves. The men ended up going downstairs to the basement to watch football, while the mom stayed upstairs in the main living room area. At halftime, the 2 men come back upstairs and they hang out for a little bit. Then around 11:30 p.m.-ish, anyone who was not spending the night kind of started to get ready to leave. And after that, throughout the next couple of hours, everyone started slowly trickling off to bed. Around 1:30 a.m., Jean and her boyfriend, Jose Barrera, go to sleep, but Tamla was still awake. She actually made a comment saying that she wanted to go home to sleep in her own bed, but some of the moms told her that she should just stay because it was late. At one point in the night, Tamla FaceTimes her husband, Lee, and when describing how she was, Lee has said that, yeah, she was a little loosey-goosey, she was relaxed, she was enjoying herself, but she wasn't acting crazy. He said that she was totally coherent, she was totally normal, and she would have been more than okay to drive herself home. But ultimately, she did end up staying. And remember, she was still awake after Jean and her boyfriend went off to bed. The last person to see Tamla Horsford alive was Bridget Fuller. She was picked up by her husband at 1:47 a.m. According to Bridget, before she left, she saw Tamla eating a bowl of gumbo. She talked to her for a second, and Tamla stated that she was getting ready to go to bed soon. Bridget left, and throughout the next 10 minutes, the home security system registered the back door opening, closing, and then opening again for the last time at 1:57 a.m. According to the door alarm log, when it opened for the last time at 1:57 a.m., it did not close again until Tamla's body was discovered the next morning. The next morning, November 4th, 2018, at approximately 8:45 a.m., Jean's aunt, Madeline Lombardi, who also happened to live at the house, woke up and she went to the kitchen to make some coffee when she looked outside through a window, and that is when she saw Tamla Horsford lying face down on the grass in the backyard, not moving. She was still wearing her pajama onesie. Madeline immediately went to go and tell Jean. Well, actually, Madeline says that the first thing she did was actually get down on her hands and knees and prayed. She prayed, and then she went to go and find Jean and Jose, which is a certainly interesting thing to do because at that point, she had no idea if Tamla was alive or not. She had no idea why she was out there, no idea if she was hurt, if she was okay, nothing, but she decided to take a quick second to pray before she actually knew what was going on. So she goes to find Jean and Jose. She knocks on their door. She walks in. Then she asks Jean if she could speak to Jose because according to her, she needed to tell him that his, quote, friend from the islands was outside lying on the floor not moving. Those are her words from her mouth. And if you're thinking that the entire thing is weird, it's because it is, but it's also weird because Jose didn't really know Tamla that well, but for some reason, Madeline wanted to go past Jean to tell Jose first. So Jean and Jose then go outside to check on Tamla. According to initial reports, Jose Barrera checked for a pulse by touching or lifting Tamla's arm or leg, but he could not feel a pulse. The group called Forsyth County 911 just before 11 a.m. And both Jean and Jose speak to the operator on the line saying, quote, she's not moving one bit, she's not breathing, she's completely face down in the yard, she is stiff. She was drinking and it looks like, I'm guessing maybe she fell off the balcony, end quote. When authorities arrived less than 10 minutes later, Tamla Horsford was pronounced deceased at the scene and her body was then taken for an autopsy. Important to note that no pictures at all were taken of the crime scene before her body was removed. She was found fully clothed in her white paw print onesie pajamas, lying face down in the backyard below a second-story balcony, and the distance from the balcony to the ground was over 14 feet. The Forsyth County Sheriff's Office immediately began investigating Tamla's death. But from the start, investigators were working on the assumption that her death was an accident, not a homicide. Meaning that investigators did not preserve the crime scene as they would have or should have for a suspected murder. In my opinion, they actually did not preserve the crime scene at all. The case remained open for almost 4 months, and according to their statements, authorities spent approximately 300 hours investigating the case and conducted over 30 interviews with party guests and others connected to the event. But then on February 20th of 2019, the FSCO made their official determination. That happened 2 weeks after the state of Georgia medical examiner provided their final report. The sheriff's office determined that Tamla must have fallen off the second-story balcony on accident, resulting in her death. In other words, they ruled the entire thing an accident. Now let's talk about the autopsy results. According to the official GBI medical examiner's report, Tamla had severe injuries to her head, neck, and torso. So many injuries of blunt force trauma. The injuries included multiple superficial abrasions on the face, including the forehead above the left eyelid, bridge of the nose, right temple, and chin, 4 types of hemorrhages in the skull and in the brain, a fractured second vertebrae, so a broken neck, a dislocated right wrist, cuts on her arms and legs, a laceration to the right ventricle of her heart, and multiple spots of bleeding in the head. So that's a lot of injuries, isn't it? But get this, for whatever reason, the GBI only took 5 autopsy photographs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. That is incredibly unusual, especially given the extent of the injuries documented. Usually the number of photographs taken is a lot higher, and not only should they include pictures of every single injury, but they should also include pictures of the body bag, the remains, identification photographs. Yet allegedly, they only took 5. Ralph Fernandez, the attorney representing Tamla's family, argued that her injuries alone, forget the crime scene, her injuries alone should have warranted for way more than 5 photos, and he stated that he has never seen the photographs himself because the GBI claimed that they were not subject to open record requests. So on February 20th, about 4 months into the ongoing investigation, the county sheriff's office announced that the case would be closed, even though the official determination of her cause of death was because of, quote, multiple blunt force injuries, end quote. This is what they said, quote, the state of Georgia has ruled the death accidental and consistent with an accidental fall, None of the injury patterns noted were consistent with foul play, end quote. When they closed the case, the department released the incident report and the death investigation documents to the public. And for Tamla's family, as you can imagine, these documents did not provide any answers. If anything, they only raised more questions. And I think it goes without saying that Tamla's husband was absolutely, completely, and utterly shattered when he heard that his wife was gone. When officers knocked on his door to inform him, Lee has said that the disrespect was instant. They had knocked and they asked him, "Is your name Lee? Is your name Lee?" He asked why they were asking, and they just kind of yelled back at him saying, "Is your name Lee?" He again said, "What does this pertain to?" And they looked at him coldly with zero sympathy at all, and they said, quote, "It's about your wife. She's deceased," with literally not 1 ounce of emotion on their faces. Lee said that immediately they told him that it was an accident and that he wasn't allowed to go over to the house where Tamla was, saying that everything had, quote, already been taken care of. Eventually, when Lee received more information, he had a lot of the same thoughts that you guys are probably having right now. Things were not making sense, and even if you just solely focus on the injuries, they do not seem to be consistent with injuries of a fall. Add to that all of the other inconsistencies and just weird things regarding the entire investigation. Sorry, real quick, you guys, it just started storming, so if you hear that in the background, sorry about that. Anyway, Tamla's family refused to accept the official ruling of Tamla's death being declared an accident. They hired an attorney, a man called Ralph E. Fernandez, to advocate in their behalf and push for answers. In May of 2020, approximately 18 months after Tamla's death, attorney Fernandez wrote a letter to Lee that would become a very big turning point in the case. In the letter, Fernandez stated that he and his team had, quote, finished the exhaustive review of the records related to the investigation. And after looking over everything, his conclusion was that the review reflected that Tamla's death being a homicide was a very, very, very strong possibility. And then there was another massive issue, Jose Barrera, Jean's boyfriend, because at the time of Tamla's death, Jose Barrera was working as a pre-trial services officer for the Forsyth County court system, aka he was working in a position that gave him access to law enforcement databases and confidential files. He was more than involved in Tamla's case as a witness because he was literally in the same house the night before the night of her death, and he was one of the first to see her body the following morning. So in regards to Jose, Fernandez wrote to Lee that because of his job, Jose was able to access paperwork regarding the investigation. Quote, the case agent was a close friend of a subject who turned out to be the leak of the ongoing investigation. I have come to the conclusion that the truth never had a chance here. The family then had an independent autopsy done, and that, once again, revealed injuries that were not fully explained by one simple fall from the balcony. It was their opinion that Tamla's injuries seemed to look way more like potential defensive wounds, indicating that she was involved in some sort of struggle. Quote, she couldn't have, with catastrophic injuries, fall from the balcony and ended where she did. She had defensive wounds that were not accounted for by either the Forsyth County or GBI, end quote. So let's talk about Jose Barrera, shall we? I told you guys that he worked as a pre-trial services officer for the Forsyth County court system, but only 2 months after Tamla's death, so in December of 2018, he was placed on administrative leave. What was the reason, you may be asking? Well, because he had been caught using his position to access confidential files related to Tamla's death investigation, a case in which he was a witness, which simply should not have happened. On December 20th of 2018, Jose Barrera was terminated from his position completely. It also came to light that Jose Barrera had accessed Tamla's incident report internally on multiple occasions when he was not supposed to. It wouldn't be until June of 2020 that the GBI would officially finally agree to reopen the case. They reopened it, but then it was announced that it was coming to a close in early 2021. And the results of this new, I guess you can call it, investigation were still devastating because, again, they concluded that no charges would be filed in the case, stating, quote, the DA review determined the facts and investigative findings do not support pursuit and prosecution of criminal charges. In other words, despite the family's serious concerns, the independent autopsy findings and public pressure, the GBI found insufficient evidence to charge anyone with a crime. That felt like a massive slap to the face to anyone who knew and loved and cared for Tamla. And to this day, despite having 2 separate investigations by law enforcement, Tamla's death remains full of questions that may never be answered. As of July of 2026, the case remains officially closed. No arrests have been made and no charges have ever been filed against anyone. Yeah, I know that was a lot of information that I just threw on you, but yeah. That's it for me today. Please let me know your thoughts on this case, and thank you for spending time with me today and for listening to Tamla's story. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
Check this out, y'all. Now you got Sebastian, and Sebastian is a special little boy. What makes Sebastian a special little boy is he know how to astroplane. When he go to sleep, he goes to different places. Now he learned this trick from his grandfather. His grandfather on his mother's side. See, Sebastian never knew his father. He's not gone, anything like that as far as being in heaven or something like that. He's just not around. He's never really been around. So it's just been him, his mother, his grandfather. And his grandfather, been training him for since he's been 6 years old, astroplaning. Now, what Sebastian is not telling anybody, his mother don't know about this, and his sisters and brothers, because, his grandfather promised him to keep it, a secret. Now, what don't nobody know about Sebastian, not even the grandfathers, when he's astroplaning, he's out looking for his father. He's trying to find his father because, he's never seen his father before. He want to meet him and he want to ask him a few questions, So, Sebastian go to sleep one day, he wake up, and this is his routine. When he get up, his grandfather walk past the room, him and his grandfather give eye contact and a nod. That's to say good morning to each other. Once Sebastian get out of bed, he has to go downstairs to the living room, and he have to go in the corner, and he have this thing he do where his grandfather taught him basically how to set up a vice. To let him know that he's back in his reality and that he's woke. And what this vice is a pyramid of books that he taught him how to set up a certain way. And he put a pop can at the top. Now, if he have to touch it in a certain spot, and when he touch it in that certain spot, if it fold and fall immediately, he's in his reality. If he touch it in that certain spot and it don't, he's basically still dreaming. So Sebastian don't go to school like regular kids. He's only 8 years old. He's getting ready to go to regular school, but he go to this daycare for a couple hours a day while his mother worked. So while he's in daycare one day, he's sitting there. Now the rule is he do not astroplane if he's not at home. Not if he's in the car with his mom, sleep, especially not in daycare. And the reason that him and his grandfather got this rule is because you cannot find a vice. You don't have a vice for daycare. You don't have a vice in the car. So you have no way of knowing when you're really, when you're really awake. So this particular day, Sebastian is in daycare. While he's in daycare, he's playing with the kids. He's having fun. Everything's going smooth. All of a sudden, the daycare lady, the routine, nap time, everybody. So, Sebastian and everybody, they putting the toys away and the crayons or whatever, and they get ready for the nap. Now, usually Sebastian don't go to sleep. He usually play like he sleep, lay there, look around, because he know in the back of his mind, he can't astroplane while you can't leave the body while you at school. So he's at school with his daycare, and he fall asleep this day by mistake. He's a kid. It can happen. He falls asleep. He get up. It's time for him to get up. Once he get up, he's looking around. Now something is off, and he knows something is off because things look strange, and he's seeing things that he usually see when he's in the other place when he's astroplaning. So, after looking around and examining everything, he knows something off. He look over in the corner. He see his grandfather. And his grandfather tell him, wake up. You shouldn't be doing this here. He snaps out of it. But he's still a little cautious because he don't have a vice here. So now he's examining and studying everything closely with his eyes. He's looking at all the little daycare children that's there with him, examining them. He's there with them almost every day. So he knows if something's off. That looks normal. He's examining the daycare lady and the assistants. They look normal. He's watching the clock. He know what time his mother comes to get him. The clock, the time, everything look normal. So his mother arrived to get him. So once his mother arrived to get him, he's examining the car. He get in the car. He's examining everything, making sure everything is in place because what he do when he's astroplaning, sometimes it looks just like the world he's in. So it can be really, really tricky. So once he get home, He's, studying everything. He studied the entire ride home. They take the same route every day. He know everything he's supposed to see, and he see everything. So he feel like he's woke. He got one last thing. He got in the house. He looked around. He went over to the living room corner to make sure his books and that pop can, was still down, and it was. But when, the last time he did it. So he came, okay, everything's normal. So he set everything up. He set his books up, set everything up because he's getting ready to, when he go to sleep tonight, the astral plane. He's walking around the house. He's looking for his grandfather. He finally finds him. He sat down and he tell his grandfather what happened today at school. And he said, I saw you and you told me to wake up. So the grandfather looked at him really, really, really strange. And, he didn't really speak much on it because, he just thought it was weird. Why would you see me? Cause I wasn't there. So, Sebastian didn't think none of it. Everything's back to normal. So that night, he goes to sleep. He's astral planet. He's looking for his father. Now, as he's looking for his father, man, he's going into some places. He's seeing many people and things. Now, he's going around and he sees his grandfather again. And he say, hey, granddad. The granddad turned around. He say, hey, Sebastian. And he kneeled down and he hugged him. He say, what are you doing right now? And Sebastian looked down. He said, what are you doing, Sebastian? Tell me, what are you doing? He said, I'm looking for my father. He said, Sebastian. He said, I'm going to help you find your father, okay? Come on, we're going to look for him together. So Sebastian and the grandfather is off together looking for the father. They're looking and looking and looking. Now, Sebastian tell the grandfather, like, hey, I think it's time for me to wake up now. I feel kind of funny. He said, well, go ahead, Sebastian. We'll start this again. I'll be right here waiting. Then, he woke up. Now, once he woke up, he raised up in the bed and he's waiting to see his grandfather walk past, so he can get the good morning nod, but he didn't walk past. So, he walked out to the living room, he went downstairs and, he went to do his thing with his vice and everything felt like it was supposed to. But Sebastian looking for his grandfather because he's like, man, granddad, where you at? He haven't found him. So now he like, maybe I'll see him when I dream tonight. He didn't know. He was confused. So he sat there. It's time for Sebastian to go to daycare. So once he gets to daycare, he's still thinking about his grandfather because for the past 2 years, since his grandfather been teaching him this, he's had that nod, and that eye stare, and that's their good morning. So the day go by, Sebastian don't take a nap or nothing. He can't wait to get to the house because he want to talk to his granddad about finding his father, for when they was in the when they was doing their thing. So he get home, still no grandfather. He kind of pouting, he's waiting around. Now he's eating dinner and they looking around. He's kind of rushing the clock because he want to get to sleep because he trying to get to sleep because he want to see, where his grandfather at. Like usually he be in a house, like when they in physical form, when they not astral planet. But he's not there for him to talk to him. And, Sebastian kind of anxious because he like, man, I need to really tell my grandfather something. Because, when you astral planet in that world, it's like if somebody's telling you something, you kind of can't take it to heart. You kind of want to talk to them in the physical and make sure, that's real because Sebastian never told no one he was looking for his father when he does that until the day he seen his grandfather in that world that he be in. And, he wanted to explain to his grandfather why he was doing that. But, his grandfather wasn't around for him to explain that to. Follow, comment, subscribe for more stories. Now Sebastian trying to connect with his grandfather. He's trying to get to sleep and connect with him and see what he is because he got to let him know, what's going on. And he feeling kind of funny too. So once he get to sleep, instantly, they got a spot where him and his grandfather went when they did this together, where they used to sit in that world, like back on top of that water tower back there. And they would sit and, with so many things going on, when they doing it together, you got horses running, cars and planes and stuff just all around where it shouldn't be. But this is the setup. This is how it is. And his grandfather told him one time to be very careful. Don't chase anything. Be careful who you talk to. If it's not me, don't communicate with it. Keep it moving. Always get back in time. Show them certain vices, things to do to get back. So he out there with, waiting on his grandfather, just looking around, because usually he come across him, but he haven't came across him. Something feels off. So once he go where the water tower is, he stand up there, he look around like they always do, and he seen the horse. Now when he seen the horse, he remember him and his grandfather used to always watch the horse. Like clockwork, every time it just runs over the bridge really fast behind a car, and it's raining. It never looked to the left, it never looked to the right, it just looks straight and it runs really fast. As he's watching the horse, the top part of the horse took a form of like a human body, but the legs stayed as like a horse. So he watching this, and he never seen a horse do this before, so he fly over there. Once he fly over there, he's standing there and he looking. And it's like, as fast as the horse was moving or whatever that thing was, he turned around and looked at Sebastian, and they locked eyes. And he turned around and like slid on the four horse legs. And he looked at Sebastian, and he took his left leg and he kind of like slid it back on the concrete while it was raining, but it still sparked fire for some reason. Sebastian looked now. Sebastian getting in mode. He getting ready to run. So Sebastian take off. The thing take off. As he's running, he looked back, and this is his grandfather, and he's laughing. And Sebastian stopped, and Sebastian like, "Granddad, like, stop playing. Like, I need to talk to you. It's important." You're like, "Okay, Sebastian, what you want to talk about?" Sebastian looked down and he said, "I've been looking for my dad." He said, "Oh yeah." He said, "Well, maybe I can help you find him." Sebastian said, "Okay." So they went flying, looking, some of everywhere, like amazing places that his grandfather never took him before. And he was showing Sebastian, and he was like, "Look, we can stay here for long as you want and find your dad." He said, "I could teach you a trick. I could teach you how to be at home at the same time, and you get to stay here for a long time, and you and your dad and y'all can be together." So Sebastian looked, he said, "Okay, but how am I going to be here and there at the same time?" He said, "I'm going to show you. It's a trick. It's a very neat trick." Sebastian said, "Okay, fine." So the trick is that while Sebastian stays there, Granddad say he knew a way to make Sebastian be woke in the physical while he's there. Now, Sebastian's granddad taught him everything he knows, so he trusted. So they do it. So he tells Sebastian, he say, "I want you to hold this. He had him doing certain things and Sebastian was doing it. He say, "Close your eyes now." Sebastian closed his eyes. Boo. He heard like a poo sound. He opened his eyes. Granddad's gone. He say, "Granddad?" So I think I should start heading back now. So Sebastian, he started heading back. But the funny thing is this street behind me, he can always find it. No matter how far out he is, he can always get on that street, because only on that particular street in this setting that is raining. And that's how you know he's going back. He couldn't find the street. He was looking for the street. He looked and he looked and he looked. Now Sebastian is terrified because he can't find the street so he can see the water tower and the horse. He knows it's time to get back. When he see that, he can't find that, and he's getting scared. So now he don't know what to do. So meanwhile, Sebastian wakes up at home. He get up. Granddad walk past the door. Sebastian smiles. He get up. He walk out into the hallway. He's walking around. He's looking. He sit down on the couch when he got downstairs. His mother walked in the living room. Say, "Good morning, Sebastian." He said, "Good morning." That's sitting there. She said, "You want breakfast?" He said, "Yeah." So, all the kids coming down for breakfast, Sebastian go to the table. He's eating. He's looking around at his sisters and his brothers. So, everybody eating breakfast, looking around, they smiling, they playing. So his mother like, "Sebastian, what's wrong? You're usually so happy in the morning." He look around. He don't say nothing. So she say, "Come on, y'all, let's get ready." So they all getting ready for school. So the granddad appeared behind him. Sebastian turn up. He look at him. He smile. The granddad say, "I know you're not Sebastian. I know you're not my grandson. What did you do with him?" He smiled. He said, "He's looking for his dad." Sebastian got up from the table and he walked off. The granddad just stared at the back of him as he walked upstairs to grab his belongings to get ready to leave with his mother. Now, once in the car with his mother, him and his sisters and his brothers, they usually be talking in the morning. But this particular morning, the mom tell all the kids like, "Hey, y'all, we're going to see my dad's memorial later on today. When I pick y'all up, it's his birthday." Sebastian smiled. The mother said, "Sebastian, are you happy that my dad is going? Like, why are you smiling?" He said, "No reason, Mom. I'm just thinking about my day." And he went on. See, what ended up happening, his grandfather had been gone a very long time. And he was teaching Sebastian these things when Sebastian astroplaned because he really was there. But see, sometimes you can run into things that you think is something and it's not. And that was not his grandfather. That demonic demon or whatever that was tricked him into staying there, and he took over his body and he stayed there. Astral blinding can be very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. And by him only being 8 years old, he was stuck there forever, not knowing what to do. If he's stuck there forever, that means life is but a dream. Follow, comment, subscribe for more stories.
Now, I think there is a spirit is in this apartment that we have recently moved to. If you're new to my page, every Friday I release a new little sketch, a little Irish mammy skit of my late mother who passed away many years ago, and to keep her memory alive, I just do little sketches of the things she used to say and do. I know it sounds really strange, but I get into character. I wear her clothes, I wear her jacket, I wear her scarf, I even wear her perfume when I'm doing these little Irish skits. This week, when I got into character, was all dressed up in my mum's clothes, ready to do my little Irish sketch. This went off. I've done a little TikTok about it, and it's basically the wording that is on my mother's gravestone, which is, "If tears could build a stairway in memory lane, I'd walk back up to heaven and I'd bring you home again." That started to go off on its own while I'm in character, while I'm dressed as my mother, about to do a little Irish skit. Recently moved to this apartment, and I know that there was an old lady that lived in this apartment before we did, and I'm not sure if she passed away in this apartment, but I think she did. Also have 3 other spirits in this apartment living with me. My mother-in-law, Auntie Eva, and my husband's grandmother. Their ashes were brought with us. I'm never alone here. I'm not actually scared of spirits. It doesn't frighten me. Mum used to always say, "You should be more scared of the feckin' living than the dead." And that is so true. The reason behind this post is I was doing another little Irish sketch yesterday in preparation for tonight's little mammy sketch called Irish Mammy Friday. So I was editing my little sketch last night. Didn't hear it while I was doing the little sketch, but as I was editing, I could hear a little whisper, and I don't know if you can hear it as well. My husband can. Really delicate little whisper, but if you listen really closely, I think I can hear, where am I? It's really faint, but I can hear, where am I? There's no one in this flat, only me on my own, doing this little sketch. So embarrassing doing them if anybody else is in the place. My husband was working away, no television on. It was really quiet, all the windows were shut. So that little whisper that I didn't hear while I was doing it, but while I was editing, I could hear, where am I? It could be my mum going, where the feck am I now? It also could be my mother-in-law, Auntie Eva, or Stacey's nan. Please let me know in the comments if you can hear it as well. Where am I?
So listen to me.
Have you ever stumbled across a perfect circle in the forest and wondered if something was watching from the trees? Today, our path leads us deep into ancient forests of Europe, where we'll uncover the legend of the fairy ring, also known as a fairy circle. For centuries, these mysterious circles have been woven into folklore across Europe, each culture telling its own version of what happened beneath the moonlight. Many believed the rings marked places where the fae gathered to dance beneath the stars. According to legend, if you stepped inside a fairy ring, you might be invited to join them. At first, it might seem harmless. The music is said to be enchanting, the dancing impossible to resist. But many stories warn that once the dancing begins, you may lose all sense of time. What feels like only a few minutes inside the ring could become hours, days, or even years in the human world. Some legends say those who entered were never seen again. Others returned only to discover everyone they loved had grown old or was long gone. Across Scotland and Ireland, fairy rings were believed to be places where the fae danced beneath the moon. In Germany, some believe the circles marked places where witches gathered on Walpurgis night. In Wales, others believed they were gateways to Annwn, the mystical otherworld. Many farmers refused to plow through fairy rings, believing disturbing them could bring terrible luck or anger the fae themselves. Some legends even warn that if you run around a fairy ring 9 times beneath the light of a full moon, the fae may reveal themselves. Others caution that doing so simply doesn't let them see you, or let you see them, it lets them see you. Some fairy rings are believed to be hundreds of years old, and the largest known fairy ring stretches for hundreds of meters, its circles still growing after centuries. Whether fairy rings are simply a fascinating natural phenomenon or places where folklore and the natural world intertwine, their mystery has endured for generations. Perhaps some paths are meant to be admired, but never crossed. So what do you think? Would you step inside a fairy ring? Or leave it undisturbed? And what cryptid, legend, or piece of folklore should our path lead us to next? Travel safely, wanderer, and may the forest watch over you.